I'm Mark Halperin.
And I'm John Heilemann. And with all due respect to Donald Trump, who said Ben Carson makes Jeb Bush look like the Energizer Bunny, we thought that analogy might benefit from a little illustration. You like that? Lots of that drum beating. Happy National Concussion Day, sports fans, which means the NFL season is getting underway tonight. In the lineup on our show, we have Biden, Boehner, and Bernie. But first, the big brawl. For the first time in this campaign, Donald John Trump is legitimately under siege. In the past 24 hours, he has taken 4 body blows from Ben Carson, Carly Fiorina, Bobby Jindal, and Jeb Bush. Let's start with the first body blow that comes from the religious angle, courtesy of Dr. Carson.
One of my favorite Bible verses, Proverbs 22:4. It says, "By humility and the fear of the Lord are riches and honor and life." And that's a very big part of who I am. Humility and the fear of the Lord. I don't get that impression with him. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't get that impression.
I never heard faith was a big thing until just recently.
He's a Seventh-day Adventist. I mean, it's something he talks about a lot.
Carson's faith, and all of a sudden he becomes this great religious figure. I don't think he's a great religious figure. And I saw him yesterday quoting something, and he was quoting on humility, and it looked like he had just memorized it about 2 minutes before he made the quote. So, don't tell me about Ben Carson.
Well, speaking to the Washington Post, Carson backed off his comments and said that he doesn't want to get dragged into a, quote, gladiator fight with Trump, probably because Trump would destroy him and drag his corpse on the back of a chariot through the streets of Midtown Manhattan. But that is just one front of the war on Trump. On the second front is Carly Fiorina. It's all about how Rolling Stone quoted the Donald about her. He said, quote, "Look at that face. Would anyone vote for that? Can you imagine that, the face of our next president? I mean, she's a woman, and I'm not supposed to say bad things, but really, folks, come on, are we serious?" Turns out Trump says that he meant Carly Fiorina's persona, but that doesn't really matter at this point. Here is how Carly Fiorina herself responded on Fox.
Honestly, Megan, I'm not going to spend a single cycle wondering what Donald Trump means, but maybe, just maybe, I'm getting under his skin a little bit because I am climbing in the polls.
Okay, now on to part 3. A lot of this happened on Twitter today, which is kind of Donald Trump's arena. It was Bobby Jindal, who fired off a series of tweets like an angry internet commenter saying that Trump doesn't stand for anything except himself, that he's egomaniacal and unserious, and also a narcissist. It was all part of a speech that Jindal gave at the National Press Club.
I want to say what everybody is thinking about Donald Trump, but afraid to say. The idea of the Donald Trump Act is great. The reality of Donald Trump, however, is absurd. He's non-serious. He's a carnival act. Donald Trump is shallow. He has no understanding of policy. He is full of bluster. He has no substance. He lacks the intellectual curiosity to even learn. Issues don't mean anything to him. Policies, ideals are not important to him. He is for Donald. Donald Trump is a narcissist and he's an egomaniac. We know that only a very weak and small person needs to constantly tell us how strong and powerful they are. The real danger is that, ironically, Donald Trump could destroy America's chance to be great again. The joke's on us. He's laughing all the way to the bank or the polling station. P.T. Barnum was never more right than right now.
Later in the day, Donald Trump replied in a statement that treated Jindal like a common has-been. Quote, "He did not make the debate stage, and therefore I have never met him," Trump said. "I only respond to people that register more than 1% in the polls. I never thought he had a chance, and I've been proven right," end quote. Now, finally, part 4 of the war on Trump. After all this, just moments ago, Jeb Bush jumped in on CNN, first reacting to Jindal's comment that Trump is not a serious candidate, and then reacting to Trump's comment about Carly Fiorina.
I agree. I think that Mr. Trump, as the
front-runner needs to be treated like all candidates, and he needs to share what his experiences are to be president of the United States, what his ideas are, and so far, at least, he has not been serious about that. I don't see how, over the long haul, that you can insult your way to the nomination or the presidency, certainly not the presidency, and not the nomination either. This disparaging of women is deeply troubling. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
All right, so Mark, you're down there in Washington, D.C. You've been watching all this unfold today. Trump's had a lot of scraps during this campaign, but he's never been under fire in quite this way. So let's talk about each of these and how they might either individually or collectively be different. Let's start off with the Ben Carson flap.
Well, I disagree with the premise that he's under siege, at least so far, although each of these has a certain distinctive quality, maybe some peril. On Carson, right now, a lot of people in the establishment are skeptical that Trump and Carson will end up as the nominee. But if you look at the key national and state polls, these guys are 1 and 2, and in most of them, they're way ahead of everybody else. So for once, Trump is fighting with someone, since he became the front runner, right at his level. And these issues of faith, if eventually Carson, Cruz, and others, Ted Cruz and others, can convince voters, particularly in Iowa and South Carolina, that Trump isn't a man of faith, that does have some peril for him. But I don't think this round did it, particularly since Carson backed off.
I think, look, when I said under siege, I think all I really mean is the notion that Trump is now fighting a multi-front war. He's not been taking this much incoming all at once. I think you're right about the Carson thing. I also think the truth is that Carson, although he's a kind of indistinct political figure, he's someone that a lot of Republicans really like. And he comes across, even when he was attacking Trump, he comes across as a kind of mild-mannered. Now, we know that he's capable of some relatively acerbic rhetoric, but getting into a fight with Ben Carson over religion, I think that's dangerous territory for Trump, because one of the places where Trump, to me, seems most inauthentic is on the question of religion. Moving on, let's talk about the Carly Fiorina thing, because I think this may be the one where he's in the most danger. Tell me what you think about that.
He is in the most danger on this one, even though, of course, with the Megyn Kelly thing, there have been other instances where there's been questions about Mr. Trump's attitude towards women. I think this one has a lot of peril. You already see some leading Republican voices, elected officials, consultants, others, speaking out about what he said. And it does make it possible that, again, in Iowa and other places where Trump doesn't do as well with women as with men, this could create a huge gender gap for him that could be a problem down the road.
Well, yeah, and look, I mean, this is an issue where, you've got the Republican Party recognizes it has a problem with female voters to begin with. And if Trump gets cast as a misogynist by the women of the Republican Party, broadly speaking, that will, I think, effectively foreclose the ability that he would ever have to get the Republican nomination. I'm not saying he's there yet, but between this and the Megyn Kelly thing, he's starting to kind of get close to that territory. So let's talk also about Jindal and about Jeb. What do you think about those two fights, Mark?
I think the Jindal thing is obviously going to be chalked up by most people as an attempt by Jindal to save his candidacy, but he is doing better. In our Iowa poll and other polls, he has moved up. He's got pretty high favorables. And it's going to be fascinating at the debate next week. A lot of times in politics, you see candidates fight in public, and then they get to a debate, and they're back in the green room, and they're palling around. It's going to be fascinating to see with all these candidates we're talking about, with the exception maybe of Carson, Fiorina, Bush, Jindal. Jindal won't be in the main debate, but he'll be there at the same time. Will they pal around with Trump, or will this public animus, public disapproval extend to how they treat him on the debate stage, but also off stage?
Yeah, well, as you know, I've been predicting that I thought this debate next week is going to be a fireworks display, and today makes me think it even more so. I'm curious about whether you think...
I'm edging in your direction on that.
Sorry?
I'm edging in your direction on that after today.
Thank you very much. Do you think Jeb is happy to have all this company in attacking Trump, or do you think he preferred to be the lone Trump attacker?
One of the great debates in Republican politics now on the campaigns and elsewhere is it good, is it smart to be the one to take on Trump and to try to take down Trump? I think the Bush campaign felt they had to do what they were doing. You still see people like Scott Walker, Marco Rubio, John Kasich staying out of this. I think at this point there's strength in numbers for most of these campaigns to be a voice to try to rally the party against him, even though right now you could argue that Trump's being big is helping people like Jeb Bush, helping people like Ben Carson.
Yeah, I got to think that Jeb is a little bit happier to not be the lone voice out there anymore. All right, let's move on. As promised, we will get to Biden, we will get to Bernie, and some other stuff after this word from our sponsors.
At this point, every Republican presidential candidate is dealing with the Donald. One of them, Scott Walker, arguably has been the most Trumped GOPer to date. In the run-up to next week's second Republican debate, Walker's campaign is trying to convince the chattering class that he's far from dead despite his falling poll numbers and a series of unsteady Walker statements that have shaken the confidence of even some of his own supporters. So today at Eureka College in Illinois, where Ronald Reagan gave his first big speech as a student, Walker claimed that he is so big, so disruptive, that you might call him a wreaker of certain havoc.
So to wreak havoc on Washington, we need leaders with real solutions. We've got a plan to move this country forward. To wreak havoc on Washington, we need to have a leader in this country as president who's actually been tested.
So, John, this is a part of Walker having a series of events before the debate, out of the debate, to try to reframe, recast, and restart the campaign. Do you think they have a solid comeback plan?
I think they have a comeback plan, and the notion of trying to make specific promises, like things to do with like repealing Obamacare, tearing up the Iran deal, rolling those out, he's got a plan. I'm not sure it's a serious comeback plan in the sense that he has fallen so far. It will be hard, given all the other noise that's going on and all the other competitors, it would be very hard for him to claw himself back to the position he was in just a few months ago.
Scott Walker, I think, like Hillary Clinton, we've said, has a bigger problem with elites right now than he does with voters. Make no mistake, he's got a problem with voters. He's dropped in a lot of polls, including in Iowa, a state he needs to do well in. But he's still well-liked in Iowa. He still has a chance to come back. But I think today's performance, unfortunately for him, didn't do much to convince elites, donors, press, etc., that he's got a plan to come back. I think he needs to rev that up. The debate is obviously massively important for him.
Yes, I don't think I mean, if you think about everybody's got a lot at stake in this debate in Simi Valley next week, but I can't think of a person who has more at stake than Scott Walker. He has fallen just so far, and I can't imagine that he is not going to join the chorus now in trying to take on Donald Trump directly on that debate stage when we get out there to California on next Wednesday. All right. Yeah. As Joe Biden keeps us waiting like the world's most stubborn jack-in-the-box, he arrived here in Gotham City today with some nice news. A new Quinnipiac poll shows Hillary Clinton with a lower number than Bernie Sanders in Iowa, and the Veeps numbers are also pretty good, even though he isn't formally in the race. So, Mark, Joe Biden is here on Hillary Clinton's home turf, palling around with all kinds of liberals. Is this just a coincidence, or is the vice president trying to stir the pot?
Well, look, he's been moving around to a lot of places. I think he's doing everything he can to keep the options open. The personal is still going to trump any of these political considerations. But make no mistake, if he decides to get in, he doesn't overtake her instantly. But he is formidable because he has vast national political experience coming into New York, doing Colbert, hanging out with the governor of New York State. This guy can do a lot of stuff, and he can do it with a better touch than Hillary Clinton.
I just think there's something about, he's obviously been stirring the pot in a whole bunch of ways. But there's something about the kind of vividness of the incursion onto her home turf, over at the Javits Center, standing up there with Cuomo. All of these people, this is Hillary Clinton's, her home and her base. For him to be kind of traipsing around here at this moment when he's supposed to be deciding about whether he's going to take her on, it just seems like political theater at a very high level to me.
And the more he plays on a major league stage, I think the more he's the guy the party would say, if Hillary Clinton falters over the emails or something else, he's the person that the party would say, we got a major league guy to plug in. He may be a flawed candidate in some ways for the general election, but we can plug him in. Nothing more major league than coming to the Gotham City, Javits Center, Colbert, all these platforms that, again, not everybody in the world can do, and Joe Biden can do them.
Absolutely right. It'd be really funny if Bill de Blasio endorsed him or something, wouldn't it? That'd be great. All right, we'll be right back with two of the smartest people in the whole wide political world after this. There's a lot of movement in the numbers today, and no, I'm not talking about the stock market. That's a financial joke for our friends here in the building. Now I'm talking about the political polls, and here with us are two people who've been waiting all day to talk about them. We've got our pollster, Ann Selzer, the president of Selzer and Company, and also our sashimi recommendation expert and Bloomberg Politics contributor, mad scientist, Sasha Issenberg. We're going to talk about some polls, Ann. I'm going to start with you. Let's start on the Republican side. Tell us about what this big poll tells us.
Well, this big poll tells us that Trump is marching forward. So every time the pundits say this is about over, the next poll comes out and it shows him winning by an even bigger margin. He's up, Carson is up, Bush is down, and then the rest of the field is kind of holding its own.
And between Trump and Carson, number one, number two in this national poll and some state polls, Trump leads across the board with every demographic and other type of group. But what can you say about where Carson is closer to Trump on gender or age or education? Are there areas where Carson's competing more with Trump?
Well, women used to be Carson's core, that he actually won over Trump in some of the polls that we've been looking with. Trump now has an 11-point lead among women, so he's making up that distance. Trump is doing better with college graduates than he used to, so those numbers have increased. Carson continues to be the core Republicans, the core conservatives. He does better, but he does not win.
Sasha, if you're Donald Trump's campaign and you're looking at these numbers and other numbers and trying to translate them into strategic and tactical imperatives on the ground in places like Iowa, what are you thinking right now?
I wonder whether you actually need a ground game. You know, I mean, the assumption is that Trump needs to spend the fall developing a sort of traditional-looking campaign with a field organization that will identify his voters throughout the fall and then mobilize them on caucus day. The nature of his coalition, this really diffuse, varied coalition, makes it really difficult to use the statistical tools that campaigns want to predict who their supporters are. And that's what you want so that you know which doors to knock on, which phones to call. The problem with Carson's, the statistical attributes of a Carson supporter are looking far easier to define now than Trump's. And that's just going to be a problem. And as the months go on, there would be a huge risk for Trump if people who look like Trump supporters in September were being treated by Trump's campaign on caucus day, because there'll probably be a lot of fluidity since then. So I think the question for Trump is, do you even want to bother with the ground game, or is his current national media persuasion strategy enough to carry him through?
And I want to ask you one more thing about this national poll. We've got three big candidates in this race, Trump and Carson on the Republican side, Bernie Sanders on the Democratic side, who are trying to bring a lot of new people into the race. So polling is going to be a challenge for you and others to say, are we polling the right people? Are we actually polling the universe that's going to turn out? What does this poll say about enthusiasm for Trump, enthusiasm for Carson amongst their supporters?
Enthusiasm for Republicans generally is waxing. Enthusiasm for Democrats generally is waning. And if you drill down to look at candidate by candidate, Trump has a very high number saying that they feel enthusiastic if he were to become the nominee. This is among everybody. These are all Republicans, and about half as many saying they'd be angry or upset if he got it. Carson, his numbers are even more positive, more tilted toward the positive. Jeb Bush is not somebody we've been talking about. He has more people saying that they would be angry if he turned out to be the nominee than say they would be enthusiastic about it.
Okay, Ann,
I think you mean not angry, but frowny face.
Upset.
Yes. Sad face. Sad octopus. Okay, Ann, I want to stick with you just because you're an Iowa expert above all else. There's a Quinnipiac poll out on the Democratic side focusing on Iowa. What do you see in those numbers?
Well, in those numbers, they've included Joe Biden and then they've taken him out. And when he is included, he's sapping some of the strength out of Hillary Clinton, and Bernie Sanders actually has a 1-point lead. You take him out of the equation, she's holding on to a 3-point lead. So clearly, his being in the mix right now is bothering Hillary Clinton a little bit more than Bernie Sanders.
And in this poll and in the Iowa poll we just did with the Des Moines Register, Sanders is clearly gaining, whether Biden's in the race or not. What can you tell us about why Sanders or how Sanders has moved up to basically a tie with Clinton in this poll and pretty close in ours?
Well, two things. We can infer that he's bringing in new people in that he wins 2 out of 3 people under age 35. Now, those are likely going to include a lot of people who've never caucused before. So he's enlarging the base, and that's helping him there. I think the other thing you see is that people right now are not focused on who can win in the general election. They're focused on who aligns with my values much more. That's what they're paying attention to, and that's why Bernie Sanders is doing better. If it were the reverse, that people were caring about who wins, Hillary Clinton might be polling a bit stronger than she is now.
All right, so Sasha, statistical tie basically with Sanders and Clinton right now in Iowa. Talk about each one of those separately. Obviously, a much more disturbing picture for Hillary Clinton, a much more optimistic picture for Bernie Sanders, given what their expectations were, where they thought they were going to be at this point in the race. But again, in terms of like, if you're out in Iowa right now, what does Hillary Clinton have to focus on now getting done over the course of the next 3 months, 4 months up to the caucuses? And what does Bernie Sanders have to focus on getting done in that same time period?
I think the burden's obviously more on Sanders. You know, first of all, as Ann mentioned, not just a challenge for pollsters, it's a challenge for campaigns. If you have people who haven't caucused before, you know, both of the campaigns are working off of a list that they've acquired from the state party of people who've caucused before. That's your core source of information about who's likely to go out, and that's the starting point for all of your field programs. And so if you are building your support that's showing up in polls from people who've never caucused before or infrequent voters to begin with, you're starting to get a huge informational disadvantage. The other challenge I think we will start to see for Sanders is, unlike in the Republican caucus where it's one vote, one man, one person, one vote across the state, Democrats see their delegates allocated by precinct. Right. And so if you have, as we might imagine Sanders does, support that is concentrated in college towns and parts of cities where white liberals are, there's not a huge advantage to running up the score in those places. So he could have 40% of the vote, but he could find that is really disadvantageous geographically. And so some things that the Obama campaign did in 2008, they found college kids and got them to vote where they lived. But at some point, there's only so much you can do if you find that a lot of your supporters are in Grinnell or in Iowa City or in Ames. And that'll be a challenge for Sanders as he tries to diversify his base of support.
And a lot of the candidates in Iowa who are down in the polls on the Republican side are saying, look at our favorability rating, the Rubio campaign, the Walker campaign. Is that a thin read, or is that something that they can cling to and say, people like us in Iowa, we've still got a chance even though we're down in the horse race?
Well, we know that anything can happen. So if you don't have a good likability factor, you're going to be in trouble. So the fact that there are several candidates with very high likability factors, they just have to figure out how to parlay that into actual votes. Why choose this person that you're just not as ginned up about, even though you like them? There's just a difference between who do you date and who do you marry. And right now, there's a lot of people they would date.
Certainly true. Difference between dating and marrying. Sasha, on another episode, we're going to come back and have Sasha discuss that. He knows more about that than anyone. Ann Selzer, Sasha Issenberg, thank you for being here. And we'll be right back.
We are always live on the internet 24/7 on BloombergPolitics.com. This program airs twice a day, 5 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Eastern.
Sometimes it's also on at 11 p.m. If you check it out, you can see us all kinds of time, all day long, day and night. It's lots of fun. Mark, we'll see you back here tomorrow, I hope. And until tomorrow, I say for both of us, sayonara.